Hey everybody, we are on 3.7, Diffusion of Religion and Language. So this is actually a two-part video. This first part, we are going to focus on language. So we are nearing the end of this unit. So for this particular one, we're looking at interaction of people and how that contributes to the spread of cultural practices. So again, kind of linking into diffusion quite a bit for 3.7. So for this first one, explain factors, which factors led to the diffusion of language. So this includes being able to understand language families, languages, language dialects, and how they diffuse from cultural hearths. And then we'll also be looking at a few specific ones that you all should know for the exam and how they are represented in different stimulus. So for classifying languages, essentially linguistic geographers study the hearths and diffusion of languages as well as their distribution and relationships between one another. And the way that they do that is pretty interesting. I'll give you all a couple of examples. So for this first one, for classifying languages, you do need to know language family. That's the largest group. So we can see that. Let me move myself. Right here in this image. So this would be like that main part of this language family tree. So there are two main ones, the two largest ones. First one is Indo-European. The second one is Sino-Tibetan. And both have come out on the exam before. So these are definitely the two that y'all should know and be familiar with. So Indo-European is the largest language family, which is more or less about 3.2 billion speakers around the world. Sino-Tibetan is the second largest with 1.4 billion speakers. Most of those are in East and Southeast Asia. So then the next one, as we're moving up our language family tree, are the language branches. So these are collections of languages that share a common origin from thousands of years ago. They were separated from other languages in their family, and they're now distinctive, although related. So one way you can kind of think of this is this is almost like a timeline in a way. Down here, we have the oldest, right, version of these languages. And then as time goes on, they start to diverge and become their own more unique languages. So two that are often brought up are the Romance branch and the Germanic branch. So Romance branch includes Spanish, Portuguese, French, and Italian. And no, it doesn't have to do with being romantic. It has to do with its Roman origins. And then we have the Germanic branch. So German, English, Dutch, just to name some of the main ones. Then we have, as we continue forward through time, as well as up the tree, language groups. These are collections of languages that share a more recent past with similar vocabularies, and we see a little bit more overlap. So, for instance, similarities between Portuguese, Italian, and Spanish. If any of you all are familiar with those languages and speak some of those languages, when you listen to the other ones, they sound familiar, right? You can maybe discern some of what is being spoken. Then we have West Germanic languages such as Dutch and Afrikaans. They will have more similarities with their North Germanic ancestors and so on, right? So we see that continued family relationship. So in terms of classifying languages, we do see a difference between what is spoken in real life and also what is seen online. So this is just kind of an interesting graphic here. This is the estimated number of first language speakers worldwide. This one is a little bit older, from 2017, but these numbers are just about the same. So Chinese is the most common language. English in third, not bad. But then when we look at the websites and the languages that they're in, an overwhelming amount is in English, right? Definitely indicating that that is a major lingua franca. So for classifying languages, we also have dialects. So these are just variations of a standard language, usually in the difference of vocabulary, word choice, pronunciation, speed, spelling. I think we can all kind of relate to this at our school and just English, right? This has the smallest amount of speakers, and it develops due to migrations and isolations from original language. So these are just fun, little examples. I know for myself, first moving to Europe, having to kind of think about some of these word changes, especially like first floor and second floor. That's different, right, for people from the US versus people from Europe. We also have isogloss. So that's a geographic boundary within a particular, where a particular linguistic feature occurs. So these are lines that divide dialects. And these are not firm lines, right? These are not official lines. They're just more of an estimate. So where we start to see language shifting in what is being called. So this example here with tennis shoes, and then here in the Northeast, we see sneakers being used a little bit more. And just like with diffusion and hearth, for languages, it's important to know some of their hearths. So language is just another element of culture. So each language has their own cultural hearths. So in terms of diffusion and how these languages ended up where they are now, these are the four main ones, right? Typically, the main causes of historic diffusion. So colonialism or imperialism, military conquest, trade, and then migration. So how did Spanish and Portuguese end up in Latin America? Sometimes a bit of a combination, right? So it had to do with migration, definitely with colonialism, and then in some ways military conquest, right? When the native people were forced to speak and adopt particular cultural traits, including language. So this is just one example of English and how the US has military bases all around the world. So those military bases definitely serve as a hearth for diffusion of not just American culture, but also the English language. So for Indo-European language family, that historical diffusion is attributed to something called the Kurgan warrior theory. And I think this is pretty interesting. So the theory is, Addie's right here. Let me just give you a little peek of Addie boy. So this theory is that this language first diffused from this hearth in what would be more or less modern Russia or Ukraine. This happened around 1000 BCE. This group of people, they were nomadic warriors, and they conquered their way through Europe and South Asia and spread the language. So that would be considered migration and military conquest. But what I think is pretty interesting is that linguists who study how this would happen, right? We don't have official records of this, but it really has to do with the wording that these languages have. So for instance, most of the languages within, here comes Guti, within the European family tree, the Indo-European language family, they have words for snow, but not for sea. So because of that, because they don't have that term, then the conclusion is that they must have originated somewhere with snow and without an ocean. So again, similar kind of theory, but another one. So the adoption, or this one is the Anatolian farmer theory. So the adoption of the Indo-European language was facilitated through agricultural practices. So as different areas started to master the art of agriculture, they had surplus foods, and then the population increased, which then allowed people to migrate out and to move away from that original hearth and throughout the European and Asian continents. So that is another theory, and that diffusion would be migration. So that is it for language. For the next part of 3.7, we're going to be looking at